Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty at a Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle. It's Monday, the 12th of June, and I'm joined today by Aidan Macdonald at Aidan C. Macdonald on the Twitter handle. Morning, Aidan. How are you? You have a good week, off, Aidan?
Yeah, it was good, Tony. Not that much happened while I was away, so that always helps, to be fair. No, it
That's
was good, mate. I'm happy to be back on speaking to you.
quiet. It was quiet when you were away. Not. There you go. The Celtic management a search and hunt rolls on. But as we do every day, we're on the briefing, direct your attention to the ticker tape that's running along the bottom, and you can subscribe to the Celtic Way, and we thank everybody that has. And you can enjoy unlimited access to the website, and you can support top quality football journalism covering the club you love in the process, all for the click of a button, guys. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Now, Aidan, one of the papers reporting this morning, it was Stephen McGowan in the Daily Mail who has said a Celtic contingent of Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay flew out private jet to Mallorca to try and entice Brendan Rodgers back to the managerial hot seat. Now that's kind of moved it on a bit because all sorts of names been linked. Myself and young Ryan spoke about them all last week, but that seems to be the most concrete move so far, Aidan, where a private jet and delegation from Celtic have gone out to meet Brendan Rodgers to discuss the possibility of Brendan Rodgers coming back to the club. How does that sit with you?
I guess there's kind of two ways you can look at it. Firstly, it is obviously a serious approach that's been made by the sounds of it for Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay flying over there. It's obviously it seems to be that is Brendan Rodgers' job really if he wants it, unless some sort of other extraordinary candidate appears. From my point of view, in terms of coaching ability, look, we know Rodgers is a great coach. He won 7 out of 7 trophies at Celtic before he left. The Invincibles played really good football. It did dip a wee bit near the end in his last season, but the results were still pretty solid. In Europe, it probably left a little to be desired, but domestically, it was almost flawless. So, in terms of a coach and a manager, people would probably argue that when it comes to likely options, he's one of the best Celtic could get. Now, there is obviously the other side of it that we were discussing briefly off air, Tony, that the way he left, a lot of people maybe wouldn't forgive him from that, which is fair enough. You know, that's their prerogative. And the fact is, you couldn't really plan for a long time under Brendan Rodgers because there's a high chance that he would move on again within, 1-2 seasons, similar to like he did last time or similar to like Ange has recently. Also, his recruitment, particularly those last couple of transfer windows, Tony, I was looking through the names last night and really with the exception of Edward, who was on loan the previous season, so it wasn't like a brand new signing that came out of nowhere. The recruitment was really dire. It was really poor, and it left the squad in a bit of a state, really.
Yep.
In terms of contracts and in terms of where they were for the next couple of seasons after that. So that's something that would really need to improve. And also the thing that would be the biggest concern with me. We've grown to be probably quite accustomed to good transfer windows under Ange Postecoglou, business getting done early, players kind of coming out of nowhere sometimes, and the success rate being really high with the exception of people obviously like James McCarthy and, Seagrest, guys like that. So it would be something that I think I can understand why Celtic would do it, and I'm sure from a short-term point of view, if you're trying to secure Champions League for the following season again, bringing Brendan Rodgers in, who has a really good track record, is probably not a bad idea. But I would just be worried about the recruitment, and also there would be the fact that I think there would be just an instant disconnect for a lot of fans with him, which I don't think we can argue with given what happened the last time.
Yeah, I think there is. He's very divisive, isn't he, Brendan Rodgers? A figure, I think, amongst the Celtic supporters, and that's fair enough. Everyone has their thoughts on Brendan Rodgers, but I think a lot of people are now kind of more accepting of the fact that if he comes back, then they will support him. Lots of comments coming in as well, Eden, but I spoke about it last week, and I thought that he's still one of the higher caliber of candidates that are available right now, and he raised the bar at Celtic to a very consistent level. As you said, he won 7 out of 7 trophies, but there are all these other caveats about this. The signings that he made, some of them were pretty poor, and there's all sorts of caveats that you need to look at. And the European results were pretty poor, but domestically he was pretty flawless, wasn't he? Well, certainly in the first kind of year and a half. Lots of people say that the football that they played in the latter stages of his reign wasn't great either. So, but I think there's been a thaw towards him, Aidan, in terms of him coming back, and I certainly know that on the other side of the city, I don't think they would welcome him back, would they? He won.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
He won 11 out of 13 derby matches, lost one. That was, I think, the one before he left and drew one. So, and people can say what they like about he was up against, no competition. It wasn't the strongest Rangers team, granted, but he still managed to beat them and still managed to give Celtic supporters some wonderful times and some wonderful results during that period of time. So you weigh up every way. If you're picking out things that you don't like about them, you have to sort of balance that with things that you did do as well, Aidan. Yeah?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. You can only beat what's in front of you at that time, and you need to remember the narrative of Rangers being promoted at that time. They'd just beaten Celtic in the Scottish Cup semi-final. There was an expectation that it was going to be a full-on title race, that campaign. So even though we look back now, and you can see clearly on paper that Rangers weren't anywhere near probably as strong as they have been in the last couple of years, it's all relative at that time, isn't it, Tony? And yeah, his football, it did probably decrease a bit in quality near the end of his tenure. It was quite a lot of just recycling the ball and it was going back and it was a bit slow, a bit placid. But those first sort of maybe 18 months, even if we push it to 2 seasons, because he did win back-to-back trebles, it was a joy to watch at times. So yeah, it's one of those ones that I understand. Obviously, a lot of people won't be happy with it, but I think when you weigh up at the other options right now that are floating about, he maybe arguably is the safest and potentially the strongest. If we're going to rule out somebody like Graham Potter, for example, I think it's been made clear that that's obviously not going to be happening. It's probably always a wee bit far away from being able to appoint somebody like that anyway. But guys like Knutson, it sounds like he's turned down Ajax, but whether or not Celtic would be able to attract him from Bodo Glimt, we don't really know. If you take guys like that out of the equation and look at likely options, I think personally he is the safest and the strongest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dispute that. Lots of comments coming in, as you can imagine, Aidan, so I'm going to flick up some of them and we'll discuss them as we're going along. Chilpil, morning Chilpil, how you doing? I think the board are moving reasonably quickly. I'd expect a new manager by the end of the week at least, he's saying.
Hopefully.
If it's between Rodgers and Knutson, then we'll be all right. Anyone else on the list is a gamble. Red Scotland, please announce Brendan. If so, it means he's getting properly back with assurances in place. He's one of the finest out there and generally strikes fear into the heart of opposition supporters, he's saying there. Morning, guys. I know not all are happy for Brendan's return, Gordon Coney. Morning, Gordon, but we must move on. Can't change the past, but it was Rodgers that started the treble dominance, and I'm sure he'll continue. That's a fair point, Aidan, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure domestically he would be pretty well suited to continue a lot of the work Andrew's done or have Celtic in a similarly strong position. It just would be Europe, wouldn't it be, Tony? I mean, we did feel that even though the results weren't great in the Champions League this year, Celtic were sort of making steady progress. Andrew discussed that himself. Obviously, don't want to go back to too much of what he's saying because I know he's moved on now and it's been just coming up to a week since he left. But the way he was talking about it did make you feel a bit hopeful for the Champions League this season that Celtic were maybe going to be able to make more of a fist of it. Under Rodgers, with the exception of maybe a couple of games, I know they beat Anderlecht 3-0 in the second campaign, but it was a bit of luck that they got the Europa League really in his second Champions League campaign. The first one, there was the games with Man City, but overall it was a wee bit lacklustre. Even if people had maybe should have won a couple of those games that were in there, but yeah, it just feels like Celtic are probably just a bit of a step off in Europe under Rodgers, and the European landscape's changed again. Teams have got really stronger. There's more money involved. So domestically, I'm sure it would be more capable of getting the job done. But Europe, it would be probably maybe. I don't want to say similar to what it was like before under him, but I think it would be hard for Celtic to the same sort of progress they had been making under Ange.
That'd have to be his yardstick, Aidan. He would have to be told that you need to improve in Europe. Basically, I said it last week. Any manager coming in has to improve the club on the European scene. Chill Pill saying, excuse me, Rodgers or Nixon for me, but we need to watch Rodgers signings. He will be from England, overpriced and old. Nicholas McDade saying best appointment that Celtic can hope for at this time. Rodgers and Nicholas McDade also saying watch to remember he won everything. Yeah, he won 7 out of 7. Jill Pill saying Michael, if it's Rodgers, so be it. At the end of the day, he's a good manager. And Nicholas saying Man City couldn't beat Celtic Europe either. Jonathan Brown coming in. Excuse me. Didn't want Brendan at first, but considering the other names linked, he might be the best choice. Sadly, Michael Ross saying Rodgers divides the support's a recipe for disaster. FS saying he thinks Tony's in Mallorca. Well, I'm not in Mallorca, I'm here. That's what he's talking about. Saying Rodgers would guarantee funds. A rookie like Maresca would just be grateful for the chance and be under the thumb of the board. Scott Howe saying if it's Brendan, I'll be happy. If it's Newson, I'll be happy. They look like the two best candidates. I think that's kind of what everybody's coming around to right now. Patrick McLaughlin saying, don't know if it's better the devil you know or what, but I don't want our fan base being split in two either.
That's a valid concern, Tony.
Yeah.
I would say there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be happy with Brendan Rodgers coming back, and you can understand that given what happened the last time. So Celtic would need to, when it comes to, say they are wanting to offer him the job, if it's maybe him and a couple of other candidates, they would need to weigh that up. As much as he was very successful the last time, there would be the baggage that wasn't there, obviously, when you appointed them in 2016. So I think that will be something worth considering, definitely.
Patrick saying, all right, I was wondering. Josh Hume Music saying, if Brendan gets a job, very interesting to hear his first press interview concerning his departure. And Mr. Phelan saying this appointment will divide the fans. Sean Sloan saying, I'm not happy with it, but Brendan's the best option that Celtic have. Sons of Scotland saying Brendan Rodgers is head and shoulders above Maresca as a manager. And Dermot 40 saying Rodgers left because he knew the board would never give him the cash to build. Now it's his time to negotiate with them to have the cash in his return, and he'll go with that. Lots of comments still coming in. Aidan, it's a talker, isn't it? And it's going to rumble on until Celtic appoint the new man. Lots of people in the Rodgers camp now, lots in the Knutson camp. Certainly, we're not overly enamoured with Enzo Maresca. But another name came into the frame today, wasn't it? Farioli, Aidan, I believe. Another Italian.
So he was being linked last night as well, saying that Celtic had apparently conducted talks.
Francesco Farioli, is that right? Francesco Farioli?
Yeah, there's interest there. That's according to the reports anyway, saying that Celtic had been in discussions with him along with Brendan Rodgers and other names as well. It would be quite unknown. Probably a bit similar to Maresca, but he has also managed a couple of clubs himself.
Yep.
In the Turkish league with Antalyaspor, I think it is, Tony. I don't want to mispronounce any of the names there.
I think it's Antalyaspor, yeah.
Antalyaspor, yeah. So he got the highest ever points total in the Turkish league. He'd been previously a coach under De Zerbi, who's obviously at Brighton right now. He worked under him at Sassuolo, and there was another Italian team as well, Tony.
Benevento. Was it Benevento and Sassuolo, wasn't it, I believe?
So he's worked under him. He's obviously a top coach, doing really well at Brighton. He's then kind of struck off and went on his loan, managed a couple of teams in Turkey. He's without a job right now, so I guess similar to Rodgers, that would be probably seen as he could make it as an easier appointment because you're not having to pay compensation to a club. Whereas, to be fair, with Rodgers, there'll obviously be some sort of deal. I'd imagine he's still getting paid from Leicester. So obviously, you wouldn't have that baggage with Farioli. But yeah, no, just another name that popped up, Tony. He was somebody that I'd kind of seen mentioned as an outside shout before Andrew actually left. I just been a wee bit of a read into him recently. Didn't really want to discuss it too much last week, or not last week, sorry, 2 weeks ago on the briefing, because firstly the manager hadn't left, and secondly wasn't really being linked, so it was kind of would have just been putting a name out of thin air. But the fact there is some reports saying that Celtic have had discussions, thought it was just worth touching on. It would be quite an outside shout, and in terms of him compared to Brendan Rodgers, if we just kind of use that as the two names that seem to be being discussed, at the moment, Rodgers would also be a lot safer. It would be quite a risk taking him, but he would be the sort of kind of, maybe young progressive manager that some people would like to see maybe given a chance. Whether or not we'd want that to be at Celtic's, maybe another discussion. But he does play quite, attacking, quicker football than Rodgers, definitely. Not the exact same as Ange, but I'd say it's similar in terms of style. What I would say about him is I was watching a couple of interviews that he'd done. I think it was not long after he'd left his job in Turkey, and he did make clear that, a bit like what Ange said, he only played one way. It was plan A or bust pretty much, and because that's the only football he felt he was able to coach, which is similar to what Postecoglou obviously used to say. Now, I know people have maybe got their opinions on whether or not Celtic need to be a wee bit more pragmatic in Europe, which is something that Knutson is why he's probably quite an attractive option for a lot of fans, because he does play attacking football, but also you've seen when they played Celtic, he was able to adapt to the sort of situation he was in rather than always playing the same way. So, yeah, I think Farioli would be similar to Postecoglou in that. It would be plan A or bust, which I can understand why in Europe that's maybe not what some people be looking for. But, yeah, it would definitely be a different appointment to Rodgers. It would be a bit outside the box. Obviously, in terms of recruitment and things like that, you would probably more be relying on Celtic there to sort of do that with Mark Lowell and stuff, because he is quite a younger manager. Probably isn't going to have the same contacts that somebody like Rodgers, etc. would. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting to touch on Tony, since he was getting linked last night. Lost in the shuffle a wee bit with obviously Rodgers, the story coming out about him. But yeah, I thought that was just worth touching on.
Yeah. I mean, all sorts of comments coming in here, and I'll flick them up again, Aidan, because the chaps and the chapesses in the comment section are giving it large. They want their opinions noted as well, so we shall endeavour to flick up as many as we can. Jerry Ross, Rodgers for me, as in Rodgers for him. Michael Ross, get Knutson in. Nicholas McDade saying it's always going to be difficult for any Celtic manager in Europe with what Celtic are up against. Martin Heaney saying he'd happily have Brendan back, great manager. Alistair Ross saying he would go for Rodgers because he'd be pretty sure he would have the measure of Michael Beale. Scott Dougal saying unfinished business for Brendan, everybody deserves a second chance. Sons of Scotland saying any manager will move if the English Premier League comes calling, especially when they're on big bucks. And Plunge McNugget saying considering the players Celtic have, Brendan is the man. And John McFarlane saying if Rodgers doesn't happen, then they should move on to Knutson. Robert Leckenby saying he doesn't want Knutson. And Kevin Ferrier saying he would take Rodgers back, it's a no-brainer. And Max Stark saying as long as Rodgers doesn't play five at the back in Europe again. So lots of comments there, Aidan, most of them pro-Rodgers, as we're seeing from the community that we've got here. Robert Kennedy also saying he's a proven winner and it's all about Celtic. There you go, Michael Duffin, Rodgers, one word, Rodgers. There you go, Aidan. Kind of the Celtic League community spoken. They're in favour of Rodgers coming back.
Yeah, I can understand kind of both people's points of views in terms of why fans would be desperate for him to return, just how successful he was. A lot of the football he played was very good. 7 out of 7 trophies, Tony, is a pretty phenomenal record. I know Celtic have become kind of accustomed to trebles over recent years, but in terms of the last sort of 7, 8, 9 years of that, he was very much at the forefront of making that a regular thing. And yeah, some of these signings were good. Brendan Rodgers also at the start, but I think just near the end, when I was looking at those transfer windows last night, he sort of that last January, which he was clearly on the way out then, quite a lot of players signed on 6-month loans like Oliver Buck, Timothy Weah, Jeremy Toljan. Before that, in the summer, it wasn't a particularly good window with the exception of Edouard, who'd already been scouted before. And then Dembele leaving as well. I don't think anybody would say we probably invested that money well. So, yeah, there's valid concerns, but you can also understand why people would be wanting him back just for the sort of safety net of it, because of how successful he was the last time. This would be almost a completely fresh group of players he's working with as well, Tony. You know, with the exception of Callum McGregor, really he wouldn't be working with that many guys that he had before. I know James Forrest is there, Scott Bain, Anthony Ralston, but none of them are really regulars in the team now, are they? So with the exception of McGregor, it would be pretty much a whole squad he's working with, a whole squad that he's putting his ideas into for the first time. So look, there's that angle as well, but yeah, we'll also just need to wait and see. Hopefully it's something that does get resolved relatively quickly. The Celtic manager, you don't want to be sitting, a couple of weeks out from when the players are coming back from pre-season and you still don't know what's happening.
Correct. More comments coming in. Not everybody wants Rodgers back, as I'm being reminded here, Aidan. So Derek Crawford, no to Rodgers. FS, some have, but not all. Tony, Andrew Gallia, not all of us. He's saying Kevin Farioli won every trophy at Celtic that he entered. And Gio saying Brendan Rodgers, no chance for him. Got to get a new face. Johnny Boy, so it's a yes from me. And Graham Baxter saying Brendan won't leave in the same way again, surely. The man must have learnt that. This is his last chance. Yep, so again, I think the majority of people want him back from the group chat, but it's still pretty divisive, isn't it, Aidan? There's a few in here that obviously don't want him either, but it will rumble on until somebody's appointed, and if it's Brendan, then this is going to be what you're going to get. You're going to have those that are in the yes to welcoming him back, and those that do not want him back.
Exactly, and I think what people are discussing about he could just leave again, that's always a possibility. He wouldn't be able to plan long term with Rodgers. That's maybe the biggest argument outside of his recruitment against him, because maybe at most you could maybe get 2 seasons. I definitely wouldn't be wanting to put him on a rolling contract, Tony, similar to how he was signed up in a long term deal the last time when he eventually moved on. I know his first year he was on a rolling contract, but after that I think he signed a 4-year deal or something like that. You'd be wanting it to be a similar thing here, I think, just so that you did have a wee bit of security. But yeah, you couldn't really do a long-term planning strategy. And once again, if he was to move on and inevitably take a lot of staff with him, if we go on the assumption that Kennedy's probably going to go with Ange to Tottenham, we don't know how that's finishing up. But for the sake of this argument, if we just say that's going to happen, him, Gavin Strachan, etc., moving on, you could then be back to square one in a couple of years' time. So I can understand people's concern about that. But yeah, it's just when you look at other options, Tony, I would love to think Celtic could be trying to go and get somebody like Graham Potter, but in my opinion, it's just really not going to happen. So in terms of likely options, I just think Rodgers is the safest. And that's why I think probably at the moment he's the best guy for the job.
Yep. Where did we get to in the comments? John McFarlane saying Rodgers would get to work with Cameron Carter, Vickers, Jota, Kyogo, Hatate, etc., etc. Kevin Ferrier says whoever Celtic get would always get behind them because you're the Celtic family. And UD says when he starts winning the trebles, the naysayers will love that. And FS saying he would need to work hard to win my respect, not convinced he can or wants to do that. And Mark Stark saying Rodgers will come in and win his first derby, and all the Celtic fans will be on side. They're a fickle bunch. Football fans in general tend to be fickle. Even is that what it would take to come in and just start my mantra winning football matches? And I wouldn't say everything would be forgiven, but it would certainly go a long way to sort of healing rifts and wounds, wouldn't it?
I think particularly if he was to maybe do something in Europe, Tony. I know a lot of people might not feel that's possible, which is fair enough. But if it was to come in and get Celtic out of the group stage and do something in the knockout stages, which was that's been discussed to death at this point, how Celtic haven't really been able to do that since the sort of early 2000s. And I think that would probably, for a lot of people, maybe go a long way to healing some of the wounds. But understandably, there's always going to be that thing in the back of your head that is he going to move on at the first sign of a Premier League job? And the way Ange did go to Spurs, would Rodgers move for a lesser job in that potentially? I know it did end quite badly at Leicester. They got relegated. He wasn't in charge when they officially went down, but it was his results that got them relegated, right, if we're being honest. Overall, I would say he did a decent enough job down there. I know the wheels did fall off this season and it wasn't great the previous campaign, but 2 fifth-place finishes when we should have got Champions League in both those campaigns. They just kind of missed out at the end and winning the FA Cup overall, I would say he did pretty well at Leicester. Oh, this season it did fall apart a bit, but yeah, could he potentially jump for a lesser job in that again? It could happen, Tony, and you wouldn't be able to, speak against that because of what he did do back in 2019. But yeah, I'm just kind of leveling it against the other options that are out there at the moment. That's why I'm sort of suggesting Rodgers, just in terms of, he's a very good coach and he's got a track record of winning stuff. He was a bit harsh with that by Liverpool in my opinion, did well at Celtic, and then the majority of his time at Leicester he did well. So the last 3 jobs he has got his teams playing well and also won stuff, even though each one of them ended in maybe slightly different ways that he wouldn't be that happy about. But yeah, if look, I'll just repeat that again. If there's another name that comes out of nowhere that looks like an exceptional option, then of course me and I'd imagine a lot of fans are going to want that person over Brendan Rodgers because there won't be the baggage. But it's just the fact is I don't think Celtic's going to have the ability to go out and get somebody like a Graham Potter or a name like that. So he just kind of seems like the best option for the short term anyway.
If Brendan Rodgers comes back, surely the board will have special measures in his contract this time, says Hazel Finn. And Red Scotland says 5-year deal. He can leave in 2 or 3, win another treble, and the last of 16 or 2 in the Champions League. Job done. Jonathan Brown saying the board never backed Brendan Rodgers' transfer market properly the last time, which is a reason why he left, and it went sour at Leicester because they had no money. He won't come back unless he has financial assurances.
The only thing I would say about that, Tony, is he did get to spend Celtic's record transfer fee on Edward.
9 million, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know, as I've already mentioned, the transfers weren't good overall in those last sort of few windows. Whether or not that was part of him going with top, in his head, top targets and being invested for that, I don't know. But he did get to spend money, but obviously it wasn't what he'd be used to at Liverpool and Swansea, probably even then at Leicester. I don't know how much he spent during his time there. There was kind of conflicting things going about when he was at Leicester in terms of he didn't really have that much money to spend in recent times, but I think he did just spend, for example, like 15 million on Harry Suter in January or something like that. So he has been spending money, but yeah, that's the only thing I would say. And he maybe wasn't backed as much as he would have hoped, but he did also get to spend money at times.
Yes, Sarah Horn coming in saying not all are happy if Brendan Rodgers comes back, and if we want to progress, I don't see this as progressive. And Michael Ross saying sick to death of hearing no manager can progress Celtic in Europe. It's about time we did. It's embarrassing. I think Celtic's record in Europe is particularly embarrassing at times, Aidan. The knockout tie in 20 years, stuff like that. So I've stated all week and I'll state it again all this week that any manager coming in would have to improve on the European record. That's a big box ticker for me, and it's certainly something that could you trust Brendan Rodgers with that? Don't know, but if Brendan Rodgers is to be the man, then he's going to have to be trusted with that, isn't he?
I mean, of course, you would need to trust him. You would need to put faith in him to get the job done. And I'm sure domestically Celtic would remain in a strong position. There would just be the baggage. Always see, for example, if Rodgers got off to a similar start the way Ange did, didn't win 3 out of his, or lost 3 out of his first 6 games, you could imagine that the sort of fans would be piling on the pressure on that occasion, Tony, and he probably wouldn't have the goodwill that Ange did when he first came in. Firstly, because he's coming in after Celtic have already been very successful. Ange came in after a disastrous season, and also the baggage of what happened in his first spell. So it would need to be based on instant success. And if he did have a bit of a tough spell, how would that go? Would his ego just get a bit too bruised potentially if fans just started kind of having a go? I don't know. So that's something the Celtic board would also need to consider. But maybe they've already thought about that to an extent. If they're actually flying over to Mallorca to speak to him, or they've already flew over, according to Stephen McGowan's report, then you would imagine that it's something they have thought about. But anyway,
and you think, reading between the lines, that Brendan Rodgers has the backing of the man that matters kind of most at Celtic Football Club, Dermot Desmond. I think he's his man, isn't he? And
seems like it, Tony. Aye.
Usually, what Dermot Desmond says goes, doesn't it? If you're trying to connect dots, it remains to be seen. But if that's the man that Dermot Desmond has thrown his weight behind, then I think you said it at the top of the programme, it could be a case of Brendan's job if he wants it.
Yeah, that's where I see it at the moment, Tony. Obviously, we'll need to keep an eye on it over the next couple of days. But yeah, at the moment, that seems to be the case.
Indeed. Well, thank you everybody for your comments. I try and scour them and make sure that there's no bad words and offensive language. It's getting harder and harder each day to do that, isn't it, Aidan? But we try and manoeuvre the comment section. But we like to get your opinion. As we say, we enjoy the community that we've built here on the Celtic way. The Celtic managerial hunt continues. We wanted it done quickly, Aidan. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's not reached a saga just yet. They're still doing their due diligence, but Brendan Rodgers seems to be the one that certainly Dermot Desmond and a contingent of Celtic directors are flown out to meet and possibly put the prospect of managing Celtic for a second time in front of him. Other names in the frame: Francesco Farioli, Kyoto Knutson, supposedly still there, Enzo Maresca. We wait with bated breath, Aidan, to see what happens, but it's been taken on a bit by the news that Celtic directors are flown to meet Brendan Rodgers. We shall see what transpires from that meeting. And I say thanks to the commenters for giving us your thoughts on the subject matter. We'll do it all again tomorrow, 10 o'clock-ish, isn't it? We'll see what happens, but good to have you back, Aidan.
Cheers, Tony. Good to be back.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And I'll just direct you to the strapline running along the bottom. You can subscribe to the Celtic Way website and support top quality football journalism covering the club you love, all for a click of a button, guys. Visit www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. We await the new managerial messiah, wherever he may roam, Aidan. Here's hoping that comes to a conclusion very soon. All the best. Thanks for your contribution today, sir.
Cheers, Tony.